It's time for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group with certified financial planners Kevin Korhorn, Mike Bernard, and Josh Gregory.
Welcome to another episode of the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group, where every week we're helping you take your next wise step in your financial life. Thanks for being here, friends. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm your host. I'm also one of the CFPs on the program. With me in the KFG studios, my business partners and fellow CFPs, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory.
Well, car prices have absolutely skyrocketed over the past year or so, and the car lots are empty. Used car prices, they're going up, not down these days. So the question is now the time to think about leasing? We're going to share our opinions on this episode of the Wise Money Show.
I almost started laughing. Like that, it just is. And we've been doing this for, 12 months now where these used car prices have been going up. But that is insane. If you'd have told me that 20 years ago, I would have said you're crazy. And I don't know, I feel a little crazy right now. We're going to help you with it right now. If you have a question for the program, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to help you as well. If you need any assistance, reach out to us. You can do so a few different ways. Call or text 574-222-2000. That's 574-222-2000. Online, wisemoneyshow.com is where you can reach us. And then all over social media, just search the Wise Money Show. Wherever you're at, we are there as well. Yeah, so car prices, it's just crazy out there. If you want to buy a new car, you probably can't find it. Just one of our, actually the producer of the show said she bought a car, her and her husband, 6 months ago, bought a new car, still don't have it.
Yep.
Unbelievable, right? And if you want to find a used car, you can't find that either, and you're going to pay an arm and a leg. So the big question is, well, then is now the right time to lease, right? Should you not pay these insane prices and just rent the car instead in hopes that prices come back down? We're gonna get there next, but let's start with what's creating all this insanity anyway? Like why are vehicle prices so high? What happened?
Well, I think this has been good old-fashioned laws of economics, right, that you learned about in high school economics course, and it's shortages. And why are there shortages? It all goes back to the pandemic when there were just not many vehicles rolling off the assembly lines, shortage of workers at times, but then, of course, the well-documented shortage of chips that go into these computers with wheels these days. Yeah. But, and I remember seeing the huge lots of Ford pickup trucks sitting out there just waiting for this one missing part so that it could actually be sold. And that happened long enough that you end up creating this shortage or a gap in the supply chain. There just weren't as many vehicles provided. And that shortage essentially puts more pressure on used vehicles. Someone who may have been a candidate for a new vehicle, they're in competition now for a used one, and there's shortages there as well.
So all of that shortage, there's not enough supply for the demand. And so what happens that now, I'm not as advanced as the Gregory household. I did econ in college. It was home ec. It was home economics in high school. Some kids don't even have that anymore. But I'm looking at used car prices. This is 2021. Okay. In January, average used car price was $22,000. In December, $29,000.
That's crazy.
That is insane. You might, simpletons might look and say, oh, well, there must have been better cars being sold, better used cars being sold in December than January. Nope, that's just straight up right. This is average. It's average. What is it, 30% increase? Something ridiculous like that. So, and then the average new car price, now this is early 2022, average new car price, $47,000. You almost, like that prices so many people out of the market.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Well, I mean, that's more than a 25% increase over the past couple years on those new cars. That is a crazy amount of inflation or price increase. And unfortunately, it's happening everywhere in the economy, right? Yeah. So we could do a show about almost every product that is produced these days. They're all going up in price. This one just hurts, though, because it's something that's just so central to our society. We all need vehicles.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to tie it back to the Cash for Clunkers program.
Yeah.
That took a lot of inventory out, and we don't have to argue that today, but that is something. And then the thing that I keep going back to is it's not that cars cost more. It's that the dollars that you're using to buy your car with are worth less. Mm-hmm. And that's again, it's when you look at a situation like this, it's important when you're doing your attribution analysis to say, well, what is this really? What's the real root cause? But the reality is, it doesn't matter what the root cause is if you need a car to get back and forth to work. Yeah. And this is a show. This is a show about financial planning. So we want to figure out, all right, well, how now should we live?
Yeah, we're going to hit that coming up in just a second. I want to go straight to the question, though. I mean, with prices this high, does that mean you should rent your car instead? And they call that, in the car market, they call it leasing, where you say, I'll just pay a certain amount. I won't own this car. I'll just drive it in exchange for a certain amount every single month. Do you do that right now? Because buying a car is so difficult and so expensive. Is leasing a better option?
Well, I would go back to the guiding principles about whether I should buy or lease in the first place. And then you say, well, if I'm leasing, likely I'm leasing a new car. If I'm buying, I have a choice. I can buy a new car, I can buy a used car. And you say, well, used car prices are up 50%. And you say, yeah, it's kind of like the cosmic game of musical chairs. Hopefully, if the music stopped and you don't have a chair, I'm still having flashbacks from kindergarten, like you're out, right? But if, like, right now you need a car for transportation, this is a time where they're fairly expensive, and the question is, well, will it stay this way? We don't know. Mm-hmm. We actually don't know, but I think you want to consider what your options are, and really financially, how well have you prepared to make this decision?
That's the key right there. It's the preparation, the planning ahead. You don't want to get yourself backed into a corner where you're a desperate buyer. Your vehicle died. You can't keep it resurrected. No amount of repairs and maintenance are going to keep that thing on the road, and you just have to replace it. That's a situation where, going out into the marketplace right now to try to find a replacement car, whether it's used or new, is going to hurt your feelings a little bit. And so hopefully this is kind of lesson to everybody. Maybe you're not even in the market for a car right now, but you're going to be at some point. Mm-hmm. It could be at the edge of retirement. It could be right when you're starting to have kids. It seems like the cars always die at the absolute wrong time, right? Yeah. It's part of Murphy's Law, I guess.
Well, I think the bad news for those of you, and for me, when I saw this headline, thought, hey, we should be talking about this, thought, well, geez, maybe there is some sort of arbitrage, right? Instead of having to buy at these really high prices, leasing is more attractive. And when you put the pen to paper, it's not. Leasing new vehicles right now has also increased in price. Companies are reducing their mileage restrictions, so they're adding additional cost to you because they're dealing with this same laws of economics as well, whether you're renting that vehicle or not. Now, if you're already in a lease, boy, it may make sense to be able to buy that thing out. You might be able to buy it out. That residual value might be lower than the market value. But right now, that's already being priced in. If you're doing a new lease, if prices come back down, you're contractually locking yourself into paying a high residual amount at the end of that lease.
That's exactly right. So if you're already coming off of a lease in the near future, pay attention to what Mike just said. The price that it would cost you to buy out that vehicle at the end of the lease was set back at the beginning of the contract. That was before we knew how high these values or these prices would be here in the year 2022. So it's possible that you might be able to buy that vehicle for less than what its actual market value is right now. It may be a good deal for you to buy that thing out.
But if supply starts catching up with demand and vehicle prices, what the vehicle curve instead of the yield curve, if that normalizes, then you might be locking in a lease today where you contractually would have to pay a higher residual value than what the market actually is if things normalize. I want to go back to Kevin's question. I mean, ultimately, this time is different. It's unique, but it comes back to your guiding principles, your financial situation. So if you're in the market for a vehicle, how do you make that choice? What other considerations? We're going to hit all that and more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for being here. This is the Wise Money Show. You're at the Wise Money Show channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. What you're watching right now is our weekly 1-hour talk show. Airs right here on this channel, 10 a.m. Eastern Time every Saturday morning. Also on podcasts at the same time, and then a couple local radio stations as well. That's why the content's that long. If you're looking for something more direct, more palatable, maybe a little bit shorter, we've got content, Next Wise Step videos that air all throughout the work week. talking about one financial concept, applying it directly to your financial life, different ways to get money into an HSA, should you do a Roth conversion, those sorts of things. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you're made aware every time we drop new content, and smash that thumbs up button. Thank you. Okay.
So do we want to hit the lease? Because really, to me, if we want to hit the lease is it's a particularly bad move right now. That feels like it has to be in the context of, all right, am I an individual or am I a business owner? Because I just had this question yesterday. A business owner asked me, should I lease?
So next up, if you're in the market for a vehicle, if you need to buy one, what's the right approach? Do you try to hold off? Should you buy used? And then it's, okay, what are the circumstances in which you would lease? Should we reverse that order? Start with lease since we're just talking about that question?
We could.
Let's reverse that order. Is there ever a good time to lease? What are the circumstances that exist where it would make sense for someone to lease? And businesses are certainly would need to be mentioned there. So start with that, and then we'll go into if you're buying, what's the right approach? All right. Is now a good time to lease a vehicle? When is there a good time? What's the right circumstances in which you should lease a vehicle if you're buying? How should you approach that right now? We're going to hit all that and more. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Every episode of the Wise Money Show is on the YouTube channel. Go check it out along with a whole bunch of other content. So when you get there, search Wise Money Show, subscribe to it, turn on notifications so you're made aware every time we drop new content. All right, so guys, here's the thing. Car prices are extremely high. You can't find new vehicles, certainly the ones that you might want. It's harder to find. Used vehicles are at a premium. Should you lease instead? And unfortunately, the leasing market it falls in line with the same economics that are driving car prices up. So it's not more attractive right now to lease. It's sort of, rising tide lifts all boats, unfortunately. But let's go a little bit deeper in leasing. Who should consider leasing? Are there circumstances or individuals where you should consider leasing? And then we'll get into buying. But.
Yeah, so a lease is a tool. So when people say, leasing is a horrible idea, I think it can be. And I think it can be a great idea. It's depending on what your particular scenario is. One is, am I an individual or family or a business? Because there are tax benefits as a business to leasing that you'd want to be particularly aware of. So if you're a business owner, I'd say, hey, go and check that out because you can deduct 100% of the cost of your lease. The leasing can be a good idea in a couple different scenarios. One is I'm going to be needing a vehicle for a certain period of time, and then I won't be. So I need a vehicle for the next 3 years, but beyond that, I don't need either this level of vehicle or quality of vehicle, but I want to be out of it. And by leasing, what you kind of do, it's similar to what you can do when you buy a stock. You can actually use various financial instruments to put a stop loss on how much you can actually lose. So when you lease, you're signing up for, hey, I'm not going to lose more than this on the vehicle, because a vehicle is a depreciating asset. So I would call it a liability. And because assets,
not when prices are going up right now.
Yeah, moneymaker these days. My goodness,
outperforming the stock market.
Right. So, the 50% that used cars are up. I mean, we should have all bought used cars.
That's right.
12 months ago. So it can be, or when you look at the components of the decision-making process, if price isn't an issue, and you say, and I've talked to some folks that say, listen, I'm going to drive a new car, and I'm not going to worry about maintenance and et cetera, et cetera. Some people are in a position where they can make that decision.
Afford a car payment forever, right?
Yeah.
And likely a growing car payment, and that's fine. The trade-off is, like you already mentioned one, which I'd say is one of the reasons you might consider a lease, depending on your circumstance, and that is maintenance. It's mostly maintenance free. Most of these things you don't have to pay for oil changes even, and other repairs. You're typically under contract where the dealership or the car manufacturer will cover all of that, and that's appealing for some people in their stage of life.
That's exactly right. So, a lot of people judge whether or not a lease is a good deal. Is it the best move financially? In my mind, you also have to ask the question, is it the right fit for your life? Either your stage of life, your lifestyle, your own, priorities, I guess you could say. I'm thinking of, some young professionals who live in cities. They need a vehicle. They don't drive too much, so staying within the mileage constraints during the years of a lease is not a big deal. But they really just don't have the time to deal with maintenance on vehicles or repairs and things. I was actually thinking about that with a client that is their situation. Where do you take your vehicle to get repairs done in a big city? It's hard enough to just find a gas station in a city, let alone a shop to have work done. Like, it may be a major inconvenience to deal with that on an older used vehicle.
Here's something also that's relevant right now. This is, just qualify this, okay? But if you're in the market for a new vehicle and you want to buy, but the one that you want to buy, the color, the make, the model, the features, you just can't find. You're like Lindsay and Jared waiting 6 months or whatever. But you need a vehicle because the one you currently have is done. Do you consider leasing now simply because, well, I don't want to buy this vehicle, I don't want to own it? And that one I'd work with your certified financial planner on. I mean, if a vehicle purchase, whether that's or a vehicle decision, whether that's a purchase, new, used, or lease, needs to fit within your overall financial life and not block other financial priorities outside of your ability to achieve them, right? And so if you can't find the car that you want, maybe consider leasing, but I'd work through all of that with your CFP.
I think that's also why it's so important that you do approach even just a car purchase or a car lease as a financial planning question. And, financial planning is always encouraging you to make the list of your needs versus your wants. And sometimes when we buy vehicles, we're more than covering the need. You need a vehicle to get to work or to get the kids to school and things, but do you need a new vehicle? Do you need a red vehicle? Do you need one with leather or, that particular entertainment system baked into the back seats and all that? I don't know. Being clear on what is the need versus the want, I think is really important so that you don't make those mistakes.
I mean, remember back in 2008 when it was you needed to buy hybrid? Because gas prices were so high, it was, well, I've got to buy. And we haven't really thought about that much. Obviously, there's been this big push with electric vehicles, and that's all the rage. But now we've got skyrocket gas prices as well. So maybe that's something else where you might want to consider leasing because you don't want to buy into a gas guzzler if we see gas prices continue to surge from here. I don't know. It's a tricky situation for sure. Work with your CFP though, because the big idea is, once again, you don't want this car decision to limit your ability to achieve some other financial goals and priorities.
Yeah, that's where you want to be making that decision within the context of the rest of your financial life, because like Josh was saying, is this a need or a want? And really at the end of the day, I got to get from point A to point B. And so you could get super practical and say, what is it? Because if I don't spend it here, I've got the resources to do something else over there. Yeah. So I would not show up to life as a victim of life and just say, well, I have to have this, therefore all this money has to go here. I mean, I was riding on an airplane, and
we're talking about cars today, Kevin. Leave your airplane story out of this.
No. Should you buy or lease an airplane, Mike?
Okay.
No, so I'm and the gal next to me says, well, we have. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm a financial planner," and usually that causes people to put their headphones on and look out the window for the rest of the flight. Unfortunately, engaged her, and she wanted to talk, and she's like, all right, well, we got this and this, and we're big Dave Ramsey fans and blah blah blah. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I said, he has some great principles that you can follow. And she's like, well, yeah, we've got this vehicle with a 96-month loan on it, which is 8 years. And she said, well, it's hard because when we took our vehicle in, we still owed $10,000 on it, and the dealership was willing to roll that into the loan. Mm-hmm. Wow. And so you can be as unaware, or I don't know, there's some not nice words I could say, but you can be as careless as you want to.
Well, we're going to talk about, well, if you're going to buy, how do you structure that? Certainly dealerships want to extend that loan out as long as possible to get you into that payment that you think you can afford. We're going to talk about that and more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Yeah, I haven't seen 96-month leases, but I am impressed by your math or loans.
Yeah,
I'm impressed by your math right there on the spot.
I would have said getting the calculator
9
out?
years. No, 10. No, 8, 7.
That's 8 years. Just really long. Okay,
yes, long loan. Yes. Who still wants to? What is it like? By year 5 or 6, you're probably this dream car. This dream car is like, okay, I'm over this.
Well, that's a boring thing about driving a Honda.
You drive it for 3 decades.
I know. It's like, well, I want to get a different vehicle, but this one still works really well. It's right. Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about buying, and then that'll flow really nicely into, okay, well, you're on the cusp of retirement, or you're in retirement, and you want to make a purchase. Do you borrow? Do you withdraw from your retirement account? Should you wait because this is a choice. You've reached this milestone. It'd be nice to get that new Lexus. Do you wait? So we'll talk about buying and flow right into that, and then flow into when you're buying your first car. We might not get all that done in this third segment, so we can pick that up in the fourth. Ready? Mm-hmm. If you're in the market to buy a vehicle, should you just hold off? Will prices come back down and be more appealing? You just put some duct tape on that thing. We're going to talk about that, helping you buy a vehicle. What's the right approach to take? That's what we're hitting right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KF2 studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Every episode of the Wise Money Show is on podcast, wherever you listen. Go search the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Subscribe to it or follow us there and rate the program. We appreciate it. Now, we're talking about the crazy car market right now, whether you should lease because buying a vehicle is so stinking expensive. And no, leasing has gotten even more expensive as well. So it's still the same fundamental question. Do you need a new car? Will you, stay within the mileage limits? Is the no maintenance or maintenance free that appealing to you? Are you a recent widow or whatever? Are you using your car for work? These are all questions that you're going to wrestle through with your financial advisor. Not wrestle. That's the wrong word. Discuss, right? Because your car decision needs to fit within the context of your entire financial plan and the other financial goals you're trying to achieve. Most people make sense to buy as opposed to lease, but that's not always the case. If you're buying and you need to buy right now, should you? Or do you just hope that prices come back down? Do you wait? And then secondly, do you buy used or new? Now, real quick, I'll tell you. So Cindy's vehicle, we were talking over the break about how certain vehicles, you probably lose interest in a vehicle after 5-6 years, and that's on the long end. So just be really careful about getting these crazy long loans on them. We bought Cindy's car in 2007. And last year, 2021, we were like, yeah, this thing's getting 200,000 miles on it. Probably need to make a change. But prices were going up. So I said, we're not doing this now. But she said, but what if the thing breaks down? We're going to need to do something, right? We're not going to put $5,000 into this thing. It's not worth that. And so I said, okay, yeah, let's start looking to see what we'd want. And we searched everywhere. And I'm watching the prices of these things go up as I'm looking and searching online, watching the prices go up. And then finally, I found one about an hour away that was still at like yesterday's price. And I said, honey, we're grabbing the checkbook and we're going to go. Like, if you like this thing. Now, it wasn't the exact vehicle she wanted. It wasn't the exact color she wanted. But it was the price that we wanted and had enough of the features. And so we jumped on it. Now we could probably sell the thing for way more than what we bought it for. But if you're in that situation, need to buy, do you just wait and see if prices come back down? Do you buy new, buy used? What do you think?
Yeah, well, the question is there a vehicle for you to buy?
Right.
Right now, that is
even
because
possible.
if you look at the dealerships and their lots, they've moved their vehicles around to make it look like the lots have cars on them.
They're having their employees park out front now.
That's funny.
Draw you in.
So yeah, I mean, there's a very limited supply of vehicles available at all. But this is where you had the great question from Cindy: are we going to put $5,000 into this vehicle? Well, the reality is, yeah, you can put $5,000 into that vehicle because we have an old junker that I drove for years, and then I gave it to my kids, and they beat the daylights out of that thing, and it's sitting there. And I just found out yesterday it's going to take $2,000 of work to make this thing roadworthy. And my wife said, "Well, we wouldn't put $2,000 into that thing; it's falling apart." And I said, "Yes, we would, because if we put $2,000 into the thing, it's worth $4,000. Mm-hmm. That's the crazy thing. Yeah. It wasn't too long ago. If you put $2,000 into that vehicle, it's worth $1,500. So this is where you say, all right, well, is there a vehicle available? And then if there is, this is where we talk to people all the time about having their financial life decisionable and how do you make a good decision? And this is we love to get cerebral about these things and ponder these things, but what is the decision-making process when it comes to a car or another purchase like this? And I would encourage you, if you look at the emotional meter, if you can get that thing all the way to zero, and I've got no emotions in this deal, I've got the best chance of making a great decision. And the more emotional I become, and the fewer facts that I have as far as data goes, the worst decision I'm going to make.
So because prices are so high, if it's going to cost you a little bit to keep that car on the road, go ahead and do so. But is that because you're thinking prices are going to come back down? I don't think so. Hopefully.
No, it's because the car you're driving now is the cheapest car you're ever going to own.
That's exactly right. And there is some economic precedent here. And Kevin mentioned earlier the Cash for Clunkers deal back coming out of the Great Recession. This was one of the big bailouts for all the car manufacturers who couldn't sell cars. The government basically incentivized us as Americans, hey, scrap that old vehicle, we'll give you money towards a new vehicle. And it just decimated the used car market. If you were coming out of high school and you needed some sort of vehicle that could just be reliable but old, maybe ugly, it just didn't exist for a long time. Mm-hmm. It took years for the manufacturing of new vehicles to get out into the used market and get inventories back up where prices could be somewhat reasonable again. Yeah. It may get better. Is it going to go back to the pre-pandemic levels? No, not a chance.
Well, you're bringing up a circumstance. I want to talk about buying your first car. What do you do for your kids, or you youngsters listening right now? What do you do? And then when you're in retirement or early retirement, what do you do? But I want to hit a couple more things on this buy new versus used. If you can find new, there might not be that big of a gap. You might be buying some technology and some features in a new vehicle that aren't in the used vehicle, and it's worth the difference in price right now. But you got to be able to find it.
Yeah, we just had that case. One of our rock star financial planners, Ben Chambers, was working with a client, and they said, "Hey, look, we're looking at a new car at about $45,000. So there's an increase really of about $5,000 over what you would normally pay. But a used car, there's an increase of about $15,000, making them about the same price."
Yeah.
And so the question was, well, financially, are you in a position? And there's a lot of things that go into that. You might say, I'm willing to sacrifice a little more in certain situations. You might say, well, This is going to be a car that my wife's going to drive. I don't want it to have any problems. This is going to be a car that my wife's going to drive, and I'm going to have my children in it. So I want the latest safety features in it. So we are willing to sacrifice in other areas in order to make it happen in this one.
What's the longest vehicle loan term that you guys would say? What's the longest?
0 months.
No,
I'm serious.
4 years.
4 years would
4
be
years.
ideal.
Yeah,
4 years.
4, 5, 6 years. To me, what you want to do eventually, aspirationally, you're working towards making those car payments to yourself, and once you have the cash, buying the car.
But because here is the thing. If you go longer than 4 years, then likely you are going to make a switch with that vehicle before it's paid off, and they're going to be glad to just roll that loan into the next vehicle, and then all of a sudden you've created this downward spiral where you're upside down, and that's a trap that is extremely difficult to get out of. So don't fall for this. Well, we can get you into this nice car at a comfortable payment because we're going to go 96-month loan.
Yeah, don't go car shopping.
Don't do that.
If one of the things you're going to use to buy your car with is a car that you owe money on.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'd pay attention also to how many years might you be able to drive this vehicle after it's paid off without a car payment and without major repairs, because those are the golden years where you can start stockpiling cash for the next vehicle and create an upward spiral in your car purchasing routine.
Without a doubt, that's what we did. That's how we recommend. That's what we'd recommend you do. That's what we've seen others do as well. When will you be done with this payment and still have quality of vehicle life where you can build up that financial war chest in preparation for the next vehicle transition? All right, we've got decisions about buying your first car or buying a car in retirement. We're going to hit that and more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Yeah, let's talk about those topics. I mean, it's 4th segment, but I want to hit those questions as opposed to transitional listener. I mean, I was more excited about these 2 questions than even about the first topic, but the first topic's sort of clickbait. When I saw the article, I was sort of hoping, I bet, maybe it would be more attractive to lease right now. Yeah. It's tricky. I mean, so the circumstance, this is a little bonus content, circumstance where I've seen leasing make the most sense is if your car is your office. The only trick with that, I'll explain in just a second, but the only trick with that is you're likely to break your mileage contract, so you'll need to work with the lessor to try to stretch that mile contract out, see what that does. But here's the thing. If you're pharmaceutical sales, or you're a realtor, or you're someone where you're taking doctors out to lunch and you've got customers in your vehicle, you've got to have that thing maintenance free. It's got to be pretty new, right?
Well, a lot of employers will actually require it. If you're in their sales force, you are kind of the face of their organization, and they may have certain images that they're trying to uphold and may require it to be, no older than 3 years old that you're driving, that sort of thing.
Yeah, the confusing thing is I've seen where we're working with folks and they're like, well, I get an $800 a month car allowance from my employer, and they spend every penny of that. Yeah. And I'm like, well, you don't have to do that. I mean, you can actually, but it just goes to show if you're spending someone else's money, you spend it differently than you spend your own.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, 4th segment, land on the plane, buying a vehicle in retirement, buying your first vehicle. And then I doubt there'll be time, but we can hit other questions too. All right, so if you're on the cusp of retirement or early in retirement, how do you buy a vehicle right now? You take it all out of your IRA? Do you do a loan? Should you lease instead? We're hitting that and more right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name's Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Stay up to date on all Wise Money content. Find us online, wisemoneyshow.com, and then all over social media, wherever you're at. We are there as well. Just search the Wise Money Show. All right, we're talking about car buying or car decisions in this really tight and unique market. Should you buy or lease? We've already said, same logic has always applied. Prices are just higher on that. But there's 2 seasons of life where buying a vehicle or making a vehicle decision is common, both of these seasons, and it's gotten trickier because of this. And one is in retirement, and the other is right outside of college, buying your first vehicle. Let's start with in retirement. Is it different now? You likely have a lot of choice in whether you buy now or whether you should wait if it's at retirement. However, I was working with someone this week who said, retired, I sort of feel like I really like a newer vehicle, that new Lexus. I'd like these features. I feel like I've reached this milestone, so it'd be nice to have that. And I actually made that decision back in 2020. And now we're 2022, so I've already been delaying it. You think I can pull the trigger now? How do you approach it?
Well,
Tell them to keep waiting?
I think it depends on each person's situation, obviously, and how far in advance have you been planning ahead for this. I think it's important that to recognize that you are going to still be buying vehicles even in retirement. In fact, a lot of people, maybe it's part of their pre-retirement checklist. They want to get reliable vehicles in the garage, ready to go at the start of retirement, just so they know they're not going to have a crisis on their hands when they're trying to have fun playing in those early years. But I think you and your certified financial planner can plan ahead decades on this stuff. Like you can plan ahead and just recognize we know we're going to be making certain car purchases, and we want to have an allowance for that. We want to bake it into our retirement forecast and just know, every so often there may be a big ticket item like a car that we're going to be spending money on. And when that time comes, if car prices are high or if they're low, if you've been planning ahead and you have the cash available, I wouldn't let it be a guilty thing. I would want to be celebrating the fact that you planned so far in advance and you've actually got the cash on hand. Don't let this be a concern or a worry or a stressor for you if you have been planning ahead. Yeah,
and in retirement, one of the considerations is, am I on Medicare? Because if you say, hey, I want to just take the money out, I'm going to take the money out of my IRA. I've got this huge IRA, and that's one of the ways that I can just have a chunk of money. That can affect what you pay for your Medicare premiums.
Well, think about this. If the new car that you were looking at was $40,000 a couple of years ago, and now it's $60,000, now that means you've got to take even more out of your IRA.
Yeah. You got to take $90,000 out of your IRA to end up with $60 to pay. Well, if you do that and you've got other income, it's very possible that you're going to have a date with Irma.
Yeah.
She's not nice.
No.
And the only thing that would make that worse is if you weren't planning ahead on the timing and you had maybe your car died and now you're looking at that $60,000 vehicle or something along those lines. The only thing that makes it worse is selling investments at a depressed price in order to fund that major tax hit followed by an expensive purchase.
So possibly, and you're not going to want to hear this, but possibly right now is a season where you either delay that car purchase a little bit longer, and you might need to because at this stage, this circumstance, you probably have a certain vehicle in mind. It might take a while to get it. So you maybe delay it, or maybe you take out that loan and you work out a plan with your CFP to pull X amount out of your retirement dollars each year to get this thing paid off. So you feel a little bit of that maybe disappointment because you've got this monthly payment, but there's a plan using your dollars to pay this thing off in full at a timing that makes sense from a tax standpoint. I think that's more the planning that will likely occur right now, unless, in this individual situation, that example I brought up earlier, she built up savings outside of retirement accounts, and so I told her, if you can find what you want, I know it's more expensive, but we'd already run the numbers to confirm everything was still on where it needed to be for her long-term plan. Go ahead and take the money out when you find what you're looking for.
Yep.
So
and for the people in retirement where you've got a financial plan and you've examined the 5 factors of retirement, and you say, hey, there's extra money that's going to be left over when I'm done. And there's unnecessary sacrifice at this time, then sometimes cost and the financial component of the decision-making process isn't the tail that wags the dog.
Yeah.
You might say, listen, I actually am not going to really worry about the financial component here.
You know, if you are optimizing, though, I like the idea of paying attention to the tax ramifications of a big ticket purchase like this. And if you know 2 or 3 years in advance, you can be working with your certified financial planner to maybe draw some smaller chunks out over the course of 3 or 4 years so that you're spreading or diluting that tax pain, maybe keeping yourself under those Medicare thresholds that Kevin was referring to, maybe keeping yourself in a little bit lower tax bracket. And again, just kind of stockpiling some cash outside of your retirement accounts so when the time comes, you can write the check without worry and without adverse tax consequences.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Not that we need to abandon that circumstance if you guys have more thoughts, but let's flip to the other end of the spectrum. This is another season of life where you're likely making a car decision, and that is your first car. Whether that's in high school or graduating high school or in college, okay? I mean, with used car prices average going from $22,000 up to $30,000 in a year, I mean, if you're trying to buy your first vehicle, what do you do? I mean, do you even have a choice than to go with that 72-month loan or 84-month or whatever, right? What do you do if you're buying your first vehicle?
Yeah, if the only option you have is borrowing money to buy that vehicle and you don't have anything saved whatsoever, that's when typically people get in the most trouble because my ability to connect the pain of making a payment for the next 72 months with how I'm feeling today and how that new car leather smells or that used car leather smells. And this is where,
I mean, think about that though, real quick, not to cut you off, but you're 20 years old and you're going to lock yourself into an 8-year loan. That's, I mean,
like
going backwards, that's half your life. You have no idea. You have no context for what that's going to feel like.
Right. So I was having breakfast yesterday with a guy and he was working with one of the people at the restaurant. And she was telling him about her car that she bought. She's 20 years old. The interest rate, and he helped her calculate it. He's a financial guy, and she's not, right? She's in the service industry, and so she doesn't have a ton of experience financially. He calculated her interest rate to be about 25%.
Wow.
And so he took her to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union and had her refinance that loan at about 3%.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so, but the problem is, if I'm 20 years old, what do I know? Now, I was 20 years old one time, and I thought I knew most
everything, right?
Yeah. Everything, yeah.
But in looking back, I think, no, I would be seeking wisdom and what I would try to do is build some sort of a war chest, because this is what I know. The more money you have, the harder it is to spend it. And so if you can, the more money that you can accumulate, the slower you're going to be and the more careful you're going to be.
Yeah. I think it's important also to recognize what are the emotional motivators that a lot of people feel when they're just getting started in life. Who are they comparing themselves to? They're comparing themselves to their peers often, and sometimes their parents as well. You know, I need to buy my first house, and I'm kind of used to the house I grew up in, and mom and dad had a big, nice pad. I want that too. Mom and dad drove nicer, newer vehicles at their stage in life. I want that too.
Right. I mean, right now I can play my iPhone from, through the vehicle speakers without having to plug anything in. That's what I should have.
Right.
Well, you might be buying a vehicle where that's not even an option.
Where you plug the Bluetooth thing into the cigarette lighter and
yeah, that might be
run
might
it
be your
through a
reality.
certain channel.
put something in the cassette deck there. And
Yeah.
No, I think it's important, though, to just recognize you don't have to impress anybody with your first vehicle. It needs to be something that's reliable, but it also doesn't need to last for 20 years. It doesn't have to be brand new. This might be a stepping stone into a more reliable car in the future as you can earn more, as you save up, as you prove, as Kevin was kind of alluding to, that you've learned some things, you've gained some wisdom, you can make your next car purchase even better than the first one. So, and that also pertains to people on the edge of retirement as well. You don't have to buy the last vehicle for your lifetime, and it's got to be brand new, and you're going to make this thing last for 30 years. No, just recognize you need a vehicle, and get something that will be reliable and safe for you. It meets your needs, and maybe you'll have another shot at making a different choice 5 years from now in retirement or in your working career. You don't have to get it all done today.
To me, you hit the nail right on the head with the features. And obviously, I interrupted there because I'm getting all geeked out about this. My first vehicle, I'm dating myself here, but power windows, or were you still rolling the window? Like that, when I was buying my first vehicle, it was, okay, you can get power windows. Well, not for my first car. I'm not, right? That would be great. And you're saying I could push a button from the driver's side and roll down the windows behind me? Woo! That is something. Not for me, not for my first car, not for my second car either. And so right now, you youngsters, don't get caught up in these convenient little features. Don't. With prices, you didn't do anything. It was out of your control what's happening with vehicle prices. What's in your control is the choice that you make. Make a choice that creates margin for you. Don't don't soak up all that margin in driving a vehicle that has super convenient, cool tech or whatever. Don't do that. Make a vehicle choice where you'll create margin, even if right now you don't have much and the payment's going to soak up a lot of it. One that will be paid off soon, and then you'll have margin in a year or 2 or 3 where you can start building up that ability to make that next vehicle purchase.
Yeah, and if you're younger, if you buy a newer vehicle and you've got that big payment, I would think about a couple of different things. There are ways you can use that vehicle to deliver food, to ride share. We just used Turo, Turo, where you just rent a car from a person.
Crazy.
So there are ways to use your vehicle to make money to pay your vehicle off.
I would even consider, sell that thing back, make some money, and then buy a cheaper vehicle. So anyway, the big idea: work with your CFP. And for you youngsters, hopefully parents, you're working with CFPs. Maybe this is a time to go meet with them and talk to them. So, all right, that's all the time we have for today. On behalf of Josh Gregory, Kevin Korhorn, all of us at KFG, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Saturday for the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group.
Securities offered through Silver Oak Securities, member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through KFG Wealth Management, LLC. Doing business as Korhorn Financial Group. KFG Wealth Management, LLC and Silver Oak Securities Incorporated companies are unaffiliated.